Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is Dignitas UK versus Avalanche Prime in the EUS Challenger Series number 14. I am Spuddington, and since Nature is now gone, I'm going to be joined by Stress, who we haven't had on for quite a while now.
It has been quite a while since I've been on the EUS Challenger Series, but the call to arms was made as Nature unfortunately had to finish this series a little bit early, so I will be joining you for Dignitas UK versus Avalanche Prime game number 2. And a bit of a strange game number 1, actually, a very obscure team composition out of Avalanche, playing that Singed, any support we've seen out of Tabe and, you know, all the way through World Championships, and it seemed to be enough to really just stall Dignitas UK and just hammer down on that shield that is the inhibitor turrets and end up pushing through in the end. So overall, the team composition you'd think would be stronger for Dignitas UK, but there was an absolutely exquisite moment of rotations in the middle of that game that ended up turning it around for them. So we'll see how the picks and bans will affect this time, and you can see already Singed has been banned out in this game.
Yeah, Singed was really the linchpin, because if you put that composition together without Singed, yes, you had a lot greater wave clear, and you had a lot greater capability to kind of move the teams around, force unfavorable rotations onto Dignitas UK. That was one of the strengths of that team composition. But without Singed, it wouldn't have mattered so much because they wouldn't have been able to teamfight at all. As it was, they just had to force a favourable fight and then get the Home Guard teleport Singed in, pull someone into the back line like Vayne, and they could really pull those fights out of the bag. So even though, you know, it's traditionally thought of, if you have Orianna and Vayne and all those champions that are next gen, it's just such a strong team fight from Dig UK normally. Didn't work out for them in this case, but without the Singed, I'd be surprised to see Avalanche run the same comp.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. And one of the things that Singed provides is a very difficult decision-making process. And it's, as you said, has been banned out here, but you kind of have to give up a lot across the map, especially when Singed has teleport, because it's the gamble of losing one objective for sure, or stalling and potentially losing 2 as he appears. So the bans have all gone through, and interestingly enough, you see Avalanche banning out Shyvana. That's a champion that we've seen more often in the past couple of weeks on the current patch, and that has allowed Caitlyn to come through in this game. Caitlyn was banned out by Avalanche last game, so I know you guys didn't quite catch the picks and bans. This is significantly different for the 2 bans that have been changed. In this game, Singed has been banned instead of Shen, Shyvana has been banned instead of Caitlyn, and in the last game there was also an Aatrox ban as well, so that's where the Thresh is from.
Alright then, so yeah, with those champions being banned out, it does actually look like Avalanche is still very much thinking about the Sivir pick, but picking Sivir into Caitlyn, maybe it's changed since the rework, but 500 range versus 650. Traditionally, people think, yes, it's a brilliant idea, I can use her traps for free mana, and Caitlyn players just say, okay, well, I'll just not level traps then, and just destroy you with that extra auto-attack range. Has that now changed? Has that dynamic changed in that lane?
It's something that we haven't seen all that much since the Sivir rework. One of the things to watch out with Sivir on this new rework is she actually clears lanes surprisingly fast. The new Ricochet adds a lot more wave clear to her kit and alongside the boomerang as well. So I'm wondering whether they want to go to some sort of kind of counter the fast lane pushing that Caitlyn has. Caitlyn Sivir, as you said, something that used to work in Sivir's favour. Now, not too sure. We'll have to see it as it goes, but you can see Dignitas UK are being a little bit random with their hoverovers for now.
Indecisive might be one way of putting it. Looking at the Fiddlesticks at the moment, wouldn't be surprising to see that. Generally works very well, especially if you have that hard initiator like Vi. If she goes in, tries to lock someone down, it's quite hard to do your follow-up damage if you've then been 3-second feared. That's quite an unpleasant experience indeed, and just generally suits Caitlyn quite well because he gives you that counter to hard engages, and he gives you fast lane pushing early on. So really strong champion in that regard. Are seeing Avalanche locking in the Gragas, almost an insta-lock, and waiting on one final pick from them before we go to Dignitas' last 2.
Now, Fiddlestick against Sivir, in my mind, I actually feel like is a smart pick. This isn't something I've discussed with anybody, but thinking about it now as we're in Champion Select, it kind of strikes me of the fact that if you use the Dark Wind for the silence, it then means Sivir can't spell shield your fear. Normally, you'd expect Sivir to just be able to spell shield off any kind of ability like that, but if they can get the timing right, it seems like, in my mind at least, that it could be a fairly good way of dealing with Sivir here.
Yeah, it would already require remarkably quick reactions to spell shield the fear, because the animation, there is an animation. It's very, very quick though. You probably got to react in like 0.2 seconds, which is possible if you're ready for it as Sivir. Or you can try and preempt it, but then you risk the Fiddlesticks calling your bluff and just saying, oh, no, I'm not going to use it then. That dynamic could work if you're really, really quick on the draw with Sivir. But more than likely, as you say, that's a dynamic that will go pretty well in the favor of Fiddlesticks, especially if he's able to, obviously bait it out with the crow spam there.
But again, I feel like the Annie pick almost flips that on top of itself once again, because Annie and Sivir are very short range, and so is Fiddlesticks. So if that means them likely to get easier stuns on a Fiddlesticks, and gives Fiddlesticks a little bit more of a choice on what exactly to silence and get that initial bounce off. Of course, you can't ever bank on the random number generator unless you're Snoopy, if you saw that clip on Reddit. But yeah, it's one of those things that I don't know how this bot lane is going to work, and it's interesting to see exactly whether they're going to want a 2v2 or whether they'll want to swap things up. Alchemist hovers over and locks in Morgana. I am a little bit behind you guys, and now I'm quite happy to see Morgana come back here. I loved playing Morgana in Season 2. Of course, she got a little bit of a change in the last patch, I believe it was. Her auto attacks became more responsive, and they also adjusted the timing of when her pool will actually start ticking damage. Rather than it being on the complete second, it's now on the half second, so it's a faster response time from after you cast it that the damage applies. They also made a couple of different changes. It now doesn't do magic resist reduction, it does percentage missing health. So Morgana has changed a fair amount, and I'm wondering whether she's viable here, and I know Alchemist likes playing this style of champion.
Well, if you get, Alchemist definitely does like this style of champion. Thinking about it, Orianna is probably one of his favorites. But the Black Shield in this scenario, excuse me, is going to be really, really powerful tool for them. It's going to prevent Gragas from performing the disengages he wants. It's going to hopefully be able to prevent Vi getting the engages she wants. This kind of very rotation-focused lane pushing style that we saw in the last game to a greater degree than we will this game, but still present in Avalanche's team comp this game. It's going to be difficult for them to play the style they want, to force the engages they want, because they're going to have to contend with the Black Shield to avoid engages, and obviously the Dark Binding to force engages. The other thing they're going to have to deal with, though, is the Jax split push. No one on Avalanche's team, assuming Jax does well enough early enough, is going to be able to deal with that Jax. He is just going to push and push and push and push, and there is nothing you can do against it if he gets strong enough with that team comp. Other than obviously 2v1 ganking him.
Yes, of course. And the other thing I was going to say, if I'm Avalanche, Nitrix has played Jax a lot. Like, that's no secret. We've seen Nitrix playing in the Riot Turkey Invitational, and many other tournaments having solid games on Jax. And now banning Shyvana means that one of the biggest Jax counters wasn't available for this game. And there was a couple of different champions that they could have picked for top. I'm interested to see how they're going to go with this Kha'Zix, because Kha'Zix does almost completely counter Jax in lane. This is a conversation I was actually having with Nitrix yesterday after they had to go against the Kha'Zix, and he basically said Kha'Zix stacks all his damage on his abilities. There's very little that you can use the counter strike against, and it means that really until Jax gets to the late game and has items like a Trinity Force and extra health items so that he can survive almost 2 rotations of Kha'Zix's abilities, it is an incredibly difficult lane for Jax to win. So I would not be surprised to see a 2v1 lane swap here.
All right, but regardless, guys, we will be moving into a quick commercial break while we wait for the delay timer to tick down and the game to load. So if you are waiting for the game, you will have to wait a tiny little bit longer. We are going to a break, as I say. So see you after this.
And when I see you in the morning, will you still want to be true? I can dream, I can dream that we'll see a brighter day.
And I'm alive, more alive than I've ever been your way. And I'm alive, more alive than I've ever been your way. Well, I can dream that we'll see a brighter day. I can see in your eyes that we're through. And I'm alive, more alive than I've ever been your way. And I'm alive, more alive than I've ever been your way. And I'm alive, more alive than I've ever been your way. And I'm alive, more alive than I've ever been your way. Well, I can dream that we'll see a brighter day. I can see in your eyes that we're through. You call for me and no one's there. You try and breathe, but there's no air. The darkness closes in and it's so cold. I wake you up, you're in a dream. I am not the enemy, but look at what you've done.
Welcome back to the EUS Challenger Series number 14. We're in the semi-finals. It's game number 2 between Dignitas UK and Avalanche Prime. I am James Stress O'Leary alongside Spuddington for this game, as Nature sadly couldn't be with us for this cast. God, that sounded like he died. Sorry, that was far too morbid.
His cat died. It's okay.
Oh.
It's a minor issue by comparison.
Well, it's myself and Spuddington on this series, so we are into game number 2, and it looks like Dignitas UK are stacking down in that bottom lane, maybe looking for some kind of invade. Avalanche, however, have spread themselves out fairly defensively.
Yeah, and it would be quite a dangerous thing, I would have thought, to invade against this kind of team comp from Avalanche. They have a lot of potential here with that AoE stun from Annie, the AoE damage from both Gragas and from Sivir. Seems like it would be quite a risky proposition, although if they could catch one single person out with the Dark Binding, with the Fear, with the high damage that they have, that could get messy pretty quickly. But just want to note, you were predicting it would be Kha'Zix versus Jax. Anstrom is the top laner, and he is currently running Gragas Teleport.
Okay, that would be a little bit of a surprise to me if that were the case, but nevertheless, I've seen stranger things happen. I think, yeah, they are actually, by the looks of it, going to swap their 2v1 into Jax, which I think they may be attempting to call the 2v1 lane against Jax here, and then put Kha'Zix in a matchup that they think he can win. But it looks like they aren't quite going to get the 2v2 that they potentially were chasing here. Avalanche will start on their blue and see where Impaler goes from here. It looks like he's rotating down towards bottom and then maybe invading, so we'll get the short end of this one.
Yeah, Dig right now have the slight advantage that I don't think Dan actually knows what's going on, but I do like to see Anstrom doing what he's doing right now, which is doing the follow along, but he has been found.
Oh, and Gragas isn't quite tanky enough in this flash forced out. There's the Dark Flight in. Will pick up the first blood, so didn't get a buff from the blue area. Did pick himself up an all-important first kill.
Now, I'm a little bit curious as to whether that was a play where Impaler was aware of that follow-along strategy that 2v1 laners tend to do quite often nowadays, or whether that was simply good fortune, because it could have been either of those options, and you wouldn't normally expect the follow-along 2v1 laner to be on that level of health. He might get dived, though.
Yeah, this is a precarious position for Anstrom. I will ask Impaler that later when I see him, but Impaler goes aggressive. The wave isn't quite there, but remember, the Bloodwell passive will keep Impaler alive. You can see on the map, I've been toppling nice fear onto Anstrom. The tower is attacking yellow, but they managed to drop it. Impaler will be forced into the Bloodwell. Meanwhile, top lane, Dan starts charging the Vault Breaker. Nitrix with a nice counter strike will mitigate a lot of the damage, and Dan is going to die from the tower shot. They take the first kill from this, and Sliver may be able to get out of this one alive.
So not a bad play there from Nitrix, and definitely a better situation for Dignitas. They will be able to take this tower a little bit quicker. They have already gotten quite a decent amount of damage down on it. Sliver is going to run out of minions before that tower runs out of health. The vice versa is not true in bottom lane, so it's going to give Dignitas quite the early advantage. We'll see whether they choose to keep pushing or whether they now choose to rotate their bot lane to top. I would imagine after their recall they'll actually go mid though.
Ooh, Samwise took the barrel there. Has to be careful. He is dangerously low, and even though Anstrom is only level 2, could have maybe caught up with him there. But Dignitas UK had themselves a lead in the first game. They did end up losing it by a very nice rotation by Avalanche that we saw during that first game, where they stacked 4 in the middle lane. Now normally that will be a bit of a sacrifice as you lose pressure halfway across the map, and Dan gets caught out here. Dark Flight will knock him up, Dark Binding as well, and the pool will be enough to pick up a kill for Alchemist.
Feels like Dignitas are really out for blood this game. They are not pleased with how the previous game went, and at the moment, well, Nitrix is doing a better job of holding his tower, as has been mentioned. Doesn't like Caitlyn at the moment though, is farming golems and will be ready to take up the farm that Gragas is pushing into the tower. Meanwhile, Yero, Fiddlesticks looking for a gank, but the jump is available.
Oh, flash into the fear and it goes away. That's just one of those things about fear. Doesn't always go the way you want it. Kha'Zix gets out of that one alive.
Random number generators. Oh, how they do improve our video games. Regardless though, Nitrix and Impaler are now holding this top lane fairly effectively. Fiddlesticks looking for the surprise on his good friend Gragas there in the bottom lane. Not going to be able to pick that up. At the moment it feels like both teams have kind of stalled out a little bit, but Impaler definitely seems to be getting the edge in terms of jungle control right now.
Yeah, and he actually started out not having that jungle control at all. He went for that invade on blue and got that pretty much a free kill on Anstrom as he was headed back to lane. So Impaler's done himself a good job of making up for that lost time over at blue. He's really started to build his effect on this game, but we'll see whether they can hold it, because as we've seen many times out of Kha'Zix when he's been through stretches of play before, Kha'Zix, you give him 2 kills, he will snowball his way back into this game.
And I do like this little dragon attempt now from Dignitas. They basically said, okay, top tower is going to fall on the next wave regardless of what we do. Nitrix is too low, he can just retreat out of there. So, move the bottom lane there. Impaler left that top lane quite early on, and so we can just rush for this dragon. Avalanche, however, did not respond very quickly, even though that bot lane walked straight across wards and then sat in front of dragon, clearly indicating their intentions. They did not actually get caught out for doing that. Does seem like Jax is going to have to keep holding his tower though, see if they're continuing to push.
Yeah, they did pick up that tower, so overall it was a trade of tower for dragon, but that is just equalizing that tower that did fall earlier for Dignitas in that bottom lane. They have to be careful though of the reaction here from Dignitas. They've stayed here for quite a while and they already know this. Avalanche pulling back very smartly. They know that they're expecting the lane swap after backing from dragon. Nice reactions out of Avalanche, knowing exactly how long they can stay for.
Yeah, DX Alchemist filling the shoes of Cook My Stock pretty effectively, I've got to say. He's I mean, really, because Cook My Sock in the early days of this team, of Dignitas UK, as they were then known British Tea Time, was honestly what carried them for a long, long time. He was really, really a man to fear and tremble before, but honestly kind of lost it a little bit. But you're still, as a replacement for that kind of guy, you always end up being compared to him. But I've got to say, the ex-Alchemist has done a remarkably good job, even compared to Cook My Sock in his prime. He's just a really, really solid player. He does, though, as you mentioned, play these kind of more supporty style champs.
Locks the Dark Binding on to Big Goose in the middle lane. Morgana's not going to kill you with one of those, but she will keep you on low enough health so that you really can't stay in lane. Teleport comes out into the top lane. Samwise gets forced back by the explosive cast. Now trying to see what he can do, and he's actually going to trade with Sliver. Tries to get the Pilt over Peacemaker, but a very nice spell shield will stop that one from picking that up. That's a 2 for nothing up in that top lane. However, mid lane, Morgana does pick up Kha'Zix.
Yeah, using both summoners and using the ultimate, Gragas will be here to pick up the slack in terms of wave pressure. However, Nitrix is now pushing really, really hard on that bottom, but Sivir and Annie are left almost completely uncontested at the moment to push hard, and that puts Dignitas in a situation where they are under pressure. They need to deal with this, but it looks like they're going to go for a dive on Anstrom.
Yeah, and a plethora of missed skill shots there with no minions really to back them up in that middle wave. Puts the Dignitas pairing there a little bit overextended. They will get away with it, but they would have liked to have picked up that kill on Gragas.
Yeah, a little bit unfortunate for them, but they will be able to take a decent chunk out of this tower. Gragas is there. Does he have the explosive cast? No, he doesn't, so we can't really threaten them too badly. The Big Goose has evolved the jump first.
Yeah, and this is the moment they've got to be careful from, because there's the Tibbers out, will lock them in place. And once again, Avalanche are just rotating very nicely here. They've decided that it is the time to stack in this middle lane and start taking down towers. Dignitas have a little bit better of a reaction to this, but with 5 men in, we're in that middle lane. Gragas has now recalled back. The reaction is that they're going to try and take out side lane towers, but that leaves nobody to really make the defense here on this tower.
Yeah, Dignitas do not... I mean, they may well trade that top tower for that. So gold terms, it's not going to change. But map control definitely snowballing in the favor of Avalanche right now. They'll take that. They can freely recall wherever they want to go. And get, Muvert in there to put down some decent vision control himself. Nitrix is able to, apply pressure to that bot lane. But he can't fight Gragas yet. He hasn't had enough farm and enough items yet. So... not an ideal situation for Dignitas. Again, as you say, Avalanche kind of getting the better of them on the lane rotations there.
And at first, just by looking at the minimap, here comes Big Goose, as I was about to say, into this bottom lane. Nitrix ward jumps backwards. He's overstayed here in this bottom lane and is going to really struggle to get out of this one alive. We'll see what Dignitas can do with this. Nice flash forward. Picks up the kill for Big Goose. They will start to pressure this middle tower and maybe replicate what Avalanche just did to them. But I felt like the positioning on the map for Dignitas maybe meant they could have picked up the 2 side lane towers, but they weren't quite fast on the push. Jax just wasn't close to the tower as they started pressuring into mid, and it just overall ends up as a net gain for Avalanche. They're making their way back into this game.
Yeah, and I think partly the reason they're able to do that is just because of the wave clear Sivir is bringing here. You saw that Dignitas had a 4-man stack in that mid lane while Nitrix was delaying 3 people who were chasing him down. But all that happened was that, Vi stood off to the side so they couldn't dive. Sivir walked up and just said, right, okay, all the minions are now dead and I can walk away and you can't push this yet. You're not strong enough. It's remarkable how fast she's able... I mean, just gone. Just 2 autos, essentially, and a Q, and it's gone. That's how fast she can just completely destroy a wave. And plus, when you're running a very, mobile composition like they are, the ultimate is just incredibly useful. And so is that wave clear, so is that ability to influence the map situation.
Yeah, looks like Avalanche want to group around the dragon, make sure it's clear, but they've slightly not got the timer on this. They're about 40 seconds early. Yarrow, however, may get cut out. This might be a prize that they're looking for here. Flashed over the wall And that means that there's going to be no flash stuns out. Impaler's going to try and defend it, but I don't think that's quite the right idea, as he will Dark Flight over, get Tibbers, locks him in place, and now Alchemist is caught out as well, has to use the Black Shield on himself, but that will only block the one there, as he's now getting chased on by Dan. I don't think he's going to be able to get away from this, and Dignitas, a very sloppy passage of play there, will get picked off right as Dragon is about to start.
However, Nitrix is continuing to push out this top lane, and this time I don't think anyone is going to be able to get there in time. Gragas' teleport will come up in maybe 5 seconds there, so he will actually be able to stop Nitrix from taking this tower completely if he wants to. Instead, he's going to use the Home Guard. Will still probably be able to prevent that, and it's only going to be an exchange of, half health on this tower for maybe that complete tower on the bottom lane and that dragon as well. So that's actually not the best trade Dignitas have ever made in their lives. He should be able to get this though.
Yeah, he will get it, although doesn't land the last auto attack, goes in aggressive. The dragon goes down, they pick up the tower, but Nitrix is now very low, and with Counter-Strike still on cooldown for a while, he can't really engage this Gragas and is forced to run away.
Yeah, a little bit unfortunate there, but now potentially Impaler hanging around this blue buff area. He could look to make something happen with a steal here, but I'm not sure how wise that would be unless Fiddlesticks can get in there with the Crow Storm. Big Goose is quite scary right now. If he gets, the right start in the team fight, it can so quickly snowball against Dignitas.
Yeah, and they were outnumbered there, so I really would not have liked to have seen Dignitas contest that. There are some things in the game that just aren't worth it, and a blue buff right now, giving away kills, would not have been good. It feels like we're longer into this game, but it is only 14 minutes in. You can see there's already a lot of pressure being put on the inner towers, and a lot of scrappy catches in the jungle. Overall, though, 8 kills to 5 in favor of Avalanche and an even turret score, so they have themselves 1,200 gold as an advantage here. We'll see whether they can build on that, or whether Dignitas can tip this one back in the opposite way, as they did have a lead in the early game.
Indeed. Now, Dignitas, they probably will have the stronger late game team fight overall. Having things like a Jax with a Black Shield, having things like an Aatrox with the Black Shield actually as well, the AoE wombo combo, the really strong front line, the tons of CC, and the long range Caitlyn for that late game AD carry. Safety, they will have a lot of tools that will be really, really strong in that situation, but the question is whether they can get there, and the question is, even if they do get there, will they be able to actually force the fights they want, given how good their Avalanche has been in their lane rotations, and in how good they have been at just controlling the flow of the game and making sure they never get the team fights that they'll lose.
Yeah, you saw in game number 1, the way they were team fighting was they actually ended up forcing ultimates out of Dignitas UK, really when they wouldn't have liked them. There were ultimates used at slightly questionable times, forcing them to kite back, and just couldn't quite get the kind of trades in the fights that Dignitas wanted. You saw them trading Dragon for 4 kills once, and Dragon's kind of worth it if you can get it for free, but trading it for a team fight like that just ends up tipping the game away from you. We'll see exactly how the team fights go. We haven't quite got to that stage yet, but another good game out of Sliver on Sivir. Wow, that's a bit of a tongue twister. Now at 2-0-4. Bloodthirster and a BF sword.
Yeah, so he's did I ever mention he clears waves quite quickly?
I've noticed that.
Oh, he actually missed the boomerang blade on the lot, but that was barely with any help. However, what we are starting to see is the Jax pushing top lane. He's pretending he's called Tryndamere, and he is just going to continue to push this continually. However, Anstrom has very good wave clear. Jax is not strong enough to dive him. He will be able to hold his tower for as long as is necessary, and he can teleport if the fight breaks out, which requires him. So Avalanche have the privilege of either allowing this 4v4 situation to continue, which could potentially go in either direction, but if it does go against them, they will have the means then to try and turn it around with that Gragas teleport.
Dignitas are looking for a long-range pick here with that Dark Binding, which really is going to be, I think, the only way they can pick this fight here, although they now do have the numbers advantage. The problem is the only person that's out in the open is Sivir, and Dark Binding is a fairly easy spell to spell shield if you have it available. You can see not quite landing again. Dignitas will chase as they now know that Kha'Zix is not down in this bottom lane again. Impaler has quite a bit of movement speed with those boots of mobility. There's the Black Shield. Will Spell Shield out both the Blades of Torment and the Dark Flight. Didn't quite let that Spell Shield time out. It was a nice play again out of Sivir.
Yeah, trying to prevent that situation occurring where she got avoided one with the spell shield and then got hit by the other. That burst of speed from the Omni Hunt is really, really, really strong. Using that to avoid the Dark Flight was nicely done, but they kind of did get caught in a situation where they had to run away just because mobility boots are so strong in that really, really long chase situation. Nitrix is now at the enemy red buff. I think Gragas has kind of smelled a rat on that front and may guess that that's going to happen. I wonder if they will be able to steal this, though. He still hasn't seen them. Oh, it's aggroed.
It has been aggroed there, and Dignitas now scrapping over a red buff again. Buff's not exactly worth a lot if you end up dying for them at this point, but get out with their lives. Now, what will Dignitas UK do with this? They are behind in the gold ever so slightly, but they feel confident with the amount of pressure that Nitrix has been able to put out with Jax to force Avalanche back towards their base.
Yeah, that is pretty much what has been holding them in the game at the moment, just because of that continual pressure up that top lane. Arguably could have been done with other champions as well, but it means that Avalanche, even though they're able to take advantages, clear waves very quickly and take, split pushing advantages, they're not able to just completely juggle Dignitas around. They're always being forced to commit a man to respond to Nitrix, and that decreases their diving power, that decreases their tower sieging potential, and it just generally kind of mitigates that difficulty that Dignitas had in the last game. So I imagine that Jax will continue to do pretty much that for the rest of the game. I remember actually seeing, I think it was Nitrix, was it at MCM or was it somewhere else? But regardless, I remember seeing Nitrix playing Jax 0-0-0 at like the end of a game because he just hadn't done anything but just push lanes.
Yeah, and that is Nitrix in his element. He loves to split push on champions that are strong at it, and Avalanche will pick themselves up an uncontested dragon, so keeping their gold ticking up. One thing about the team composition out of Avalanche, which I like their composition on the whole, but to me, we talked about earlier the way that Kha'Zix matches up against Jax. Oh, Flash Tibbers in the bottom lane into Assault and Battery. Samwise has been caught out on those wards that were just timing out in the bottom lane. A nice pick off for Avalanche.
Yeah, and that now gives them a big tower pressure threat here because they've got Tibbers up. That means no easy wave clear because Tibbers can tank it, Dan can tank it a little bit, and you can see right now he's just normally doing that. But unfortunate side effect, oh, he smited Tibbers. I guess that is a solution, in fairness.
I don't think Annie will be too happy about that, but when Jax is in split push mode, they really want Kha'Zix to be the one that fights Jax, because if Kha'Zix engages on Jax, nice spell shield out from Sliver, Jax is far more likely to be pushed away if Kha'Zix is the one to engage, because Jax cannot block most of the damage that Kha'Zix will do to him. However, the teleport is on Gragas, who is far more dependent on landing the explosive cask and the barrel in order to prevent Jax from split pushing. Flash comes forward into the Dark Flight. They get Mover, and will they lock him down with the counter-strike? Will lock him in place. There's the ult and the Zhonya's out of Alchemist, but it was only locked onto the one, so they didn't get the follow-up damage. Crowstorm has come in over the wall as Dan will fall as well. Big Goose is getting the resets though with Samwise desperately trying to get away, forced to flash away. That's a triple kill, I believe, for Kha'Zix as Yero is rooted back towards Dragon.
Yeah, Anstrom actually they're getting feared by Yero, who's running for his life right now, but that's a secondary concern, honestly, because Avalanche will take this inner tower for free. That will give them that extra bit of map control. And Dignitas there, getting that one pick on them, Avalanche, kind of meant that their whole method of dealing with this comp fell apart, because that one pick meant that Nitrix then could not continue being Jax, could not continue split pushing. Yero is going to die. This is my prediction. I am Nostradamus. Thank you. Because Nitrix was then not able, was forced to join up with the team, Dignitas then felt they needed to engage that fight because Annie wasted a cooldown. Otherwise, they would just end up losing that tower damage essentially for nothing. And that, in turn, just kind of snowballed there into that fight where Kha'Zix did do the old cleanup thing. He is now 6-1, and that's scary.
Yeah, they really need to start locking down this Kha'Zix, and Alchemist didn't quite get the Soul Shackle that he would have liked. It actually was only on Move It, and then ended up Zonya'ing, because the Dignitas UK are actually going to just surrender this one out. They feel like the team composition just isn't quite right to deal with this one. And they will end up surrendering. That means it's a 2-0 to Avalanche Prime here.
I am actually really quite surprised they surrendered that. They were like, it's not like they were definitely behind. Dignitas UK were definitely not in a winning position at that point, but they were not out of that. They could have easily, you know, with that Jack split push, with that Caitlyn late game, they could have potentially brought that back quite plausibly. I mean, that was only 4,000-5,000 gold difference between the two teams. So I have to wonder whether maybe they were really not feeling it. Maybe